Salutations to our fine podcast audience. Welcome to 3 Ps in a Pod, episode 213. Wait a minute. You just keep dragging that out there.
I just want to see how long we go.
Dramatic.
It's just, people are going to get tired of waiting.
Oh, I don't know. I think people are tired of us already.
I think so, too.
That's why we don't have questions.
I don't know that anything we can do at this point can change that. But
yeah. So I was hoping, but because we filmed 2 in a row, to, either shame us or congratulate us on our Super Bowl predictions.
49ers.
But we still don't know.
we don't know.
Now, the next time we record one, so maybe next week we'll know.
We will know unless they cancel the Super Bowl.
I wonder if this really...
But we will not remember when we film next time that we said we would say
I wonder if this confuses our audience, if they feel like they're in a time warp sometimes.
I doubt it.
We're talking backwards but forwards, and it's just crazy.
If they're like me with most of the podcasts I listen to, they have scrubbed through all of this.
Yes.
The banter at the beginning.
But how do you know when we get to the good part?
I just keep hitting fast forward until I hear, oh, that sounds like an interesting conversation.
Okay. Well, let me see if I can start one.
Okay.
Today, we're going to have another one of those conversations about things that we have heard people ask questions to us about, or things that they've struggled with.
Yeah.
And so, Nathan, you want to set this one up, or would you like me to?
No, I mean, well, let's hear how you would set it up.
Don't you think it'd be cool if we had a jingle for this?
No.
We also haven't named the segment. It'd be hard to have a jingle.
No.
I'm still thinking about the podcast music, and I would like to have... I don't know. Go ahead.
You
It's
literally
really good.
only think about the podcast music right now.
I know,
right.
but...
You don't think about it any other time.
I know. I can imagine every time Jason starts the podcast music, I'm like, I should probably work on that.
I'm going to say that is not time well spent. But that's fine.
It's not. So I hear these days a lot of people talking about there's a right way to apologize, and then there's a wrong way to apologize, and most people aren't doing it very well.
Yes. Yeah.
And you were talking in your message not too long ago, and that subject kind of came up. We were talking about making amends to things that we've done in our past, sins that we've committed, and how to own that and make it right. And you had mentioned maybe you owe an apology, but you don't need to. You need to do it in the right way.
That's right.
And I know there are a lot of people that are real sensitive about that, about and rightly so.
Yeah.
That there is a proper way to do this. So let's teach people how to do it.
All right. I like the way you set it up.
You like that?
As a friend of mine says, 10 out of 10, no notes.
Nice.
So 10 out of 10, no notes on that one, Jason. So
then I shall stop talking.
there you go. So we're going to talk about how to apologize. So maybe we should start with what are bad apologies. Now, Jason, I'm going to assume.
Sorry.
I can assume as now that you are in the world of counseling.
Oh yeah.
Occasionally, when you have couples come in, there are things that must be apologized for, or things that must be dealt with, or should be apologized for. Are there ways that you've heard in the way that people handle conflict, or the way people communicate to each other? Because I know you've said to me, those two in particular are big deals in marriage or in relationships is we're not communicating well and we're not handling conflict well.
That's right.
So what are the ways you hear that people aren't?
Oh, man. I will start with this one. This is the big overarching thing. Anytime you are more concerned about protecting yourself than you are about the apology, you're probably doing it wrong.
As we started the topic, that was what hit me in my mind is I know there's, proper ways people have these things I must do to do it right.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
But anytime somebody comes to me to apologize and I can tell they aren't self-protecting, how they go about it doesn't matter as much
I agree
to me
with that.
anymore.
That's right.
As long as I am willing, in the old terms of, to fall on my sword.
Right.
If I am willing to just come humbly before you, and I can tell when somebody comes and goes, I'm so sorry. And it's obvious. I'm open to whatever you say, whatever you tell me I need to do.
Well, and we talked about this before. It's vulnerability, and vulnerability is such a loving thing, and it's so connecting and attractive to people when someone is willing to, be vulnerable and to be, open and honest about that, and not, there's always a but attached to it. I'm sorry, but if this hadn't happened, or if you hadn't said this, or things had gone differently, it wouldn't have been that way. but I'll apologize for my part.
Right.
Well, it's not up to you to decide which parts should have gone. You just, saying those words, I was wrong.
Yes.
And then just not saying anything
That's
else.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right? And that's scary because we've talked about this too. Vulnerability is terrifying. Yeah. To almost everybody. I don't hardly know anybody that's just like, I love being vulnerable.
No.
Most people, it does terrify us because it feels like a little bit of, I lose some control. It feels a little bit like, in spiritual terms, I am dying to self.
Yes.
I'm putting to death the self of, that part of me.
That's right.
So it's not necessarily an easy thing to do. It's not a fun thing to do, but it is the way that brings two people together.
Yeah.
And that's where reconciliation happens.
Yeah, I think often with people, this has been my experience with people, honestly, of all ages. I wish this was a thing that you could say, oh, only children don't know how to apologize well. But it's unfortunately of all ages of people, something gets brought up. Hey, this thing, whatever. And maybe it got brought up in a good way. Maybe it got brought up in a bad way. Someone starts bashing somebody. You always blah, blah, blah. Either way, what usually follows next, in my experience, is some self-protected version of an apology. I'm sorry, but if you didn't, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I might have crossed line, but you crossed some lines. That's right. You did some things. There's this way of not owning up to it. And I know, my wife and I, we're at that age with our girls where they've now kind of moved into the, most of their conflict is interpersonal conflict. Sister on sister crime, right? And we're trying to teach them, this is how you apologize. This is how you deal with it. And so, there's a lot of sorry. And I go, well, that's not an apology. It's not an apology. An apology, and I always tell them, I said, it is you saying, I did something bad that caused something bad to you. I feel bad that what I did that, and I will do better. That's effectively what I'm saying in apology is, there was a wrong that was occurred. Not this, I'm sorry that you got your feelings hurt.
Right.
I'm sorry that you're emotional about what happened. I'm sorry that we fought. I'm sorry that I'm sorry, and we tell them, and then say the specific thing. So this morning, good example. There was a conflict, and one sister said to the other one, "Don't touch my stuff, you little piece of junk." Right? So they're yelling back and forth, and they say, "You have to apologize to me. You can't call me names. I'm never apologizing to you." So I come downstairs and I said, "All right, let's do the apology." I said and so I made the one say, I'm sorry that I went through your stuff. Not just, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have gone through your stuff. That stuff belongs to you. I shouldn't. The other one said, I'm sorry that I called you a piece of junk. I'm specific. I'm not sorry that this whole thing occurred and then just people are upset and there's vibes that are off. I'm sorry for what I did that made you feel this way, and I'm going to do better. Now, of course, they don't. They're
So let me play devil's advocate for a second.
Sure.
Because I can imagine there are people who would say, well, what if I did something right? Ooh. Or I spoke some truth.
Right.
And I was not in the wrong, and someone did get hurt or offended or something bad happened to them. And are you saying now that I should apologize for the good thing that I did or the right that I did?
I don't think you ever apologize for a good thing that you did. But what I may find out is if I'm willing to ask questions, you talked about vulnerable, if I'm willing to ask questions and say, okay, I feel, use I feel language, right? I feel like what I said to you was the truth. Are you upset with what I said or how I said it? Because it may be the way I went about saying it. So this example.
That's right.
Was it right for the daughter to say, you're not allowed to touch my stuff? Absolutely. And yeah, it came across a little harsh at the first part. It's when I threw in, you little piece of junk. There was truth that was spoken. Yeah. And it is how I felt about you in the moment. It was true. But what I always say to my daughters in those moments is, I always say, you're not actually speaking the truth. You're speaking what you feel in the moment. What you feel in the moment and what is true are not the same thing. So when you say that your sister is a piece of junk, or I hate you and I wish you were dead, that's actually not true. That's actually not how you actually think and feel. Because if I then handed you a knife and saying, okay, well then do what you said you want to do. You couldn't. You wouldn't want to. That's because right. What you are doing is you are in fact saying something that is untrue to gain power over this person and make them feel something. So, yeah, that's how you felt in the moment. Maybe the way you said it. You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
If I can ask questions to get to what is it that hurt your feelings,
yes,
it may be that you didn't like the thing I said. And then I can say, well, I can't apologize for what I said that was true, but if I do want to make this right. I've had to say that to my daughters when they come to me and go, I didn't like it. I had one daughter who said to me, when you told me that lying is wrong, I felt like you weren't letting me be me. And I said, letting you be a liar? Yeah. And she goes, if that's what I feel, that should be how it goes. I go, okay, well, I can't apologize to you for telling you not to lie. Yeah. But I do want to make this right. So can we figure out if I did do something that needs to be, you know what I'm saying? And often what we find out in those cases is, okay, there wasn't something. I just didn't like the way it felt. But sometimes we come across, oh, you didn't like that when I said it. You know, I pointed my finger at you and it made you feel small. They've said that to me. I don't like it when you point your finger at me. And I say, okay, well then I am sorry because that wasn't necessary. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It gets, and that may be too specific for people. But.
No, but the point I was trying to get at, and I love the way you handle that, but it's not always so black and white. And and I deal with this in couples counseling a lot. There'll be one person in the couple that is very hurt and very offended and just feeling all sorts of neglect or disrespect or just all kinds of bad things over something that their spouse did. And yeah, if you dissected what the spouse did in that moment, you couldn't necessarily find a necessarily wrong thing that they did. It could have been something they may have just accidentally overlooked, or it could have been something that wasn't conscious to them at the time. Yeah. And then we get into the space where we've got someone who's hurt and someone who feels very justified in what they did and that they're not necessarily in the wrong. And now we're at an impasse.
That's right.
Because nobody feels like they can apologize for anything at this point. And it's so hard to get to, like, and I love what you said about asking questions of what is it that, you know, you're feeling and where did it happen and why?
So can we have a conversation and maybe try to separate it out for and maybe just for me.
Yeah.
Things I know I did that were wrong.
Oh, right.
How do I go about, because that's a different thing from this. There is a nuance. I'm not trying to minimize that.
Yeah.
But that's a different kind of thing where there might not have been an actual crime committed.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
But I've done something.
Yeah.
There certainly are times where it's not the person's felt experience that a wrong happened. There are times where it's pretty clear and obvious. You're not allowed to call someone a name, or you're not allowed to overreact in the way you did, or use your volume to try and control me. You know, I agree. So how do I handle the situation?
How do I apologize? So, I'm trying to move out of the world where it's children and their offenses and everybody can see them. But you're talking about adults, couples is where y'all were sitting. I think about the ones I've been with that are, so someone has an affair or someone takes the couple's money and misuses it without the other person knowing. And now it's all become clear in the moment to both parties.
Yeah. And
I'm the one that did it. I there's no hiding. I've heard that done really badly too.
Sure.
I did do this. I did take that money, and I did do it without telling you about it. But I knew that if I told you, the opportunity wasn't there for me to. I give all these excuses of why I had to do what I did.
Well, that goes back to what we said in the beginning. That's a self-protective kind of thing. I think at that point, to properly apologize, I need to be submissive enough to my partner to allow them to define what has been taken from them.
Yes.
Correct.
And what wrong has occurred
That's
towards them, and listen and allow that to, and it's hard. I'm not saying this is easy, but especially when you haven't yet fully dropped your self-protect mode, you've got to listen to them just tell you what you've done.
That's what I also think.
And you got to trust that and say, you get to define how you've been wrong.
That's what I wanted to try to get to, is not all of our crimes against each other are nuanced.
That's right. There
are things that happen in couples and in families that are wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And the apologies don't happen well in those situations because somebody wants to define why they did it. That's one bad way of explaining why I did it. Why you did the thing that was clearly wrong is not important.
No.
That's right.
You owning that it was clearly wrong is what's important.
Mm-hmm.
Also, once you've owned that you're the one that violated the relationship, making amends in that moment is the other person should get to determine, can you trust me again? What do I need to do to earn your trust?
Yeah.
And I'm so sorry, and I accept that I have to basically throw myself on your mercy. I violated trust.
Yeah, and you go back to the whole thing of, allowing the person to define. You also, and this is what's so hard, because I've dealt with this in marriage counseling as well, is you've got the person who did the wrong and the person who was wronged, and it sometimes takes longer than this person wants for them to actually feel like I can trust you again.
That's right.
So, like for instance, a spouse who has been cheated on.
Right.
And after, 2, 3, 4 months, you're not completely trusting me when I tell you where I'm going.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that can be frustrating to some
right.
people. Like, well, I'm doing everything I can do. And I sometimes have to go, yes, you are. You're doing everything you can do. It's just not enough yet.
Yeah.
That's right.
And you don't get to decide when he or she trusts you again.
Yeah. When you lie and hide, the person who you have hidden your behavior from, they don't know how long, honestly, you were lying and hiding.
No.
So it takes a while to, and what they're really learning to do is because they trusted you the whole time you were lying.
Well, that's how you got away.
They trusted you the whole time. And now they not only don't trust you, they don't trust themselves.
Yeah.
Well,
they have to then rebuild. How can I and the honest truth is sometimes depending on the amount of, there is no complete way to apologize enough. Sometimes the damage has been done. Yeah. You can't determine that it's going to be reconcilable.
Maybe not.
And
you know what I mean?
That's right.
I think all of that is part of the apology. I think, we tend to think of apologies as almost like tape, or glue. I have broken this thing. I say the thing I need to. It's the glue. It brings everything back. And then it's this one momentary, I go to my counselor and I say in front of the counselor to my wife, I shouldn't have done that and I'll do better. It is on the other part of this that, because most of the time, I don't know, because I'm not with all these couples, but the couples I know, often the trust is the biggest thing that's been broken.
Yes.
I don't feel safe or I don't feel whatever, because most often, and I'll just talk about my experience, the story I told in the sermon of hiding a pornography addiction from my wife. It was the trust she had given me that was the currency I abused in order to maintain the harmful action. It was not just, I don't like what he's doing on the internet. There's all so you were sneaking around. So there were times where I was talking to you and this was happening. Right. There were times I called home and this is what was going on. Now, all those memories are tainted. All those memories have this little bit. And so it took, that moment where I got caught was 15 years ago. But I mean, there are times even still today where I can see if she walks in the room and I just happen to be shutting a laptop when she's coming into the room harmlessly, I can see a little bit on her face, just this moment.
Of course.
And then she pauses, and then, sometimes we have a conversation, most of the time we don't. And I want to make clear, just for her benefit, it's not most of the time, but those moments, it's
understandable.
Yes.
Well, and I said this to a guy recently who had who had a very similar experience in their marriage, and they said, I'm just tired of her asking, who am I texting, what's going on? And I said, you got to remember, it is a grace she's still with you.
Right.
It is just a matter of grace that she decided to still be here. You know why she wants to know, and it's your job. It's that humility you come back to, which is, I have to now live. But see, I see that even as a gift to me. And I said it in the message on Sunday of, it was when I got, and I realized when I was I had written on the script, when I was forced into the light, in both services I had to stop and say, I did not come willingly. But see, I see that as a gift.
Yeah.
I see it as a gift of God that she walked in the moment she did, because who knows how long I would have stayed hidden. There is a level of humility I've had to learn that for my personality, I would not have learned willingly.
Yeah.
But that was forced upon me to be willing to say, this is where I really want to live with God anyway. Transparent, open, vulnerable. This has been a gift to me, but I can see the gift as a curse if I'm unwilling to admit that was wrong.
Yeah, you use the analogy of tape. I have before said to people that when I have done the wrong, I've incurred a debt. And really, my apology is my acknowledgement of the debt.
That's right.
And what I'm doing at the moment that I say to you, I'm sorry, is I acknowledge I owe you this. And I'm really asking you, what's it going to take to pay this off? And sometimes you hurt people and they go,
nothing.
You can't ever make that up to me.
Nope.
And but if they say to me, hey, I'm willing to work on it.
Yeah.
And you make payments, you aren't the person that gets to determine how many payments.
Yeah.
Now, the other person, I've been on the other side and I've sat with people and go, hey, you may also at some point begin crossing the line into
unforgiveness.
You now have power over them.
Yes.
It's a careful balance, but it really is that thing of we were talking about how to make apologies. It really is, I own I did something wrong, and you get to say whether are we going to work on this debt, or is this just going to be bad debt that I'm going to have to carry?
Well, and sometimes it is going to be a bad debt you carry for quite some time. And like you said, the thing that I think is going to keep you from crossing the line of, being so frustrated that you give up because I can't ever pay this debt back. Right. Why even try anymore? Why would I even bother? So why don't I just go, that kind of attitude. That's the wrong direction.
That's right.
But then on the other side of, well, I'm never going to let that go. No. I'm going to hold this over you. I'm going to bring it up as many times as I can. The place where I think all of that starts to fade into the middle and reconciliation happens is when both parties can properly lament and mourn what has happened. Because like you said, there's some things you can't fix. You can't.
And it doesn't go back.
It doesn't go back to the way it was. It doesn't get repaired.
But you can go forward.
You can go forward with the lament in your heart of, we mourn what has happened. And sometimes we just got to cry it out or emote it out, whatever you need to do, and then walk forward.
And we can, in fact, build something better.
You can.
Because unlike most people don't get to that level of complete, vulnerability on both sides. Right. You really hurt me.
Yeah.
But I care enough about the relationship or the surrounding. Often people make light of it, but there are surrounding relationships that sometimes make it worth it to me to keep this thing going.
That's right.
Well,
so we work on it.
And it's a beautiful thing when two people start living in that and they start walking forward in that, and they are together mourning it in a way that's not condemning of the person that was in the wrong, and certainly not pressuring the person that is working through the forgiveness, but both properly understanding this is sad, but every time we're able to lean into that with the help of the Spirit of God, when we lean into each other, like you said, Ed, something stronger can grow there.
Yeah.
It's that old sermon illustration that I've used before of it's called kintsugi. It's the Japanese way of piecing broken pottery together with gold, and it becomes stronger
it's more valuable.
More valuable than it was before. The cracks are there. They're still able to be seen and felt and all the things, but there's something there that's better and more beautiful and more valuable than it was before.
I think one thing that we probably should say as well, because I think all the stuff we said is really helpful, especially in helping to repair relationships. I think one critical thing to say is if you are a follower of Jesus, the reason you do this is not only because of the relationship or because of the other person, it's because it is what love demands of you. When I have done wrong, to live in the reality of my wrongness. Confession is healing for your soul, but it is also healing for the other person, because I know there are people who hear, even if I apologize, that relationship ain't ever good. Or we have no relationship, and I'm going to you're saying just write a letter and tell them I'm sorry, and they still won't ever speak to me again. Well, that seems like a waste of time. There still is a benefit.
Yeah, all of that, we have a responsibility as followers of Christ. I forgive as I've been forgiven. And the way I have been forgiven, there was a long time God wrote a letter of forgiveness to me, and I said, dude, I do not care. Well, I just looked away and kept doing, and God continued to offer me the letter. So I do it because I am living out the gospel.
That's right. And that's what I mean is I think that's critical to say is a lot of what Jesus is trying to do is, we talked about removing false self on Sunday, but also removing these lies that I live under all these lies. And we are so self-deceptive into thinking, if I can just convince myself I didn't do that bad thing, it's as if I never even did the bad thing. It wasn't bad. They deserved it. Or it wasn't bad because the situation's more complicated. We are constantly trying to justify ourselves. One of my daughters, when we've been talking about apologies, I asked her one time, because she struggles the most with apology, and I said, why is it that you struggle so hard to say I'm wrong? And she just said, if I say that I'm sorry, then it's okay for you to be mad at me because I did something wrong. And I said, everyone already knows you did something. The only one who's pretending like you said the reason they're mad at you is because you did something wrong and you're unwilling to say it. And so I think it's John Ortberg I first heard say this. He says, when you're wrong, the moment you admit you're wrong, you're right because you're living in truth. There was a wrong committed. You are, as long as you hold on to, I wasn't wrong, you're still wrong. And everyone knows you're wrong. But the truth is this healing. We treat the truth like it's a weapon we can use against people. The truth is this healing thing, because all of us know what it's like to still carry wounds from people we wish would send us a letter and say, hey, that thing I did, I was wrong for that. I should have never done that. I'm sorry for whatever that took from you. And some of those people you can't get the sorry from because they've been dead for a while. You talked in the last episode about people who are still living with these memories of trying to make their parents proud. Some of that is because you're hoping my mom or dad would have told me they were sorry for what they did or what they took from me or whatever. And they never did. So for you to withhold that from someone else. And so I just want to encourage people on that. We don't only say it is healing for relationships, and hopefully that is, to me, that's one of the chief goals is reconciliation with the person. But like we said, that person may have been so harmed and they may not be ready to forgive. You can't control whether they are or not, but you can control whether you apologize.
Well, and I think it is the ultimate vulnerability of this whole thing of apology and reconciliation. The ultimate vulnerability is I have no control.
Right.
If I am the one who has done wrong, the complete vulnerability is I say I was wrong. And that's all I got. That's all I got. And from there on, but even if you decide, and maybe everybody has, there's certainly things that I've done that I've said I'm sorry to people, and apparently that hasn't fixed it. And they have decided, that the weight's too much.
That's right. Yeah.
And so we don't have a relationship. At that point, I can't do much else except pray for them.
Yeah.
Want the best for them.
That's right.
And be open to, if at some point in the future God says to them, hey, make that right, that I am then, well, I tried 20 years ago, buddy.
Right. And then there's always that thing of, it's never, almost, I won't say, I don't want to make a generality, but there's a lot of situations where both people on either side have a part to play.
Sure. Yeah.
And so
that's probably more common than we want to admit.
That's what I think too. And so I think in that situation, and I'll speak from my own experience, like when my wife and I have gotten at odds with one another, what I feel in me that holds me back from apologizing to her is I'm afraid she won't own her part.
That's right.
And I won't get the same justification that, I won't get it back from her. Right. And so I hold on and I go, you know what? Well, she played a part in this too, so I'm just going to wait. And the problem is I don't go first.
That's right.
And I've tried to. That's been my hopefully my growing as a husband in now too. Getting close to 30 years of doing this is I try to just get over myself and go, you know what? It doesn't matter. Almost every single time that I have memory of, we do come together.
That's right.
And she does own her part. Right. But there's that thing in me. And I
don't want to go first.
I hate it. Yeah. It bothers me more as I get older. I'm trying to kill that thing.
Yeah.
That just says, come on, man, go first.
Yeah.
You know this is going to go well for you if you do. Get over yourself, you idiot.
Yeah.
And when I do, I have often found that grace that I was looking for, but I'm afraid, man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
The image I had in my head a few years ago, because I have that same thing. Mm-hmm. Maybe everybody does. I have the same thing, particularly in long-term marriage of, hey, we both had some wrong.
Right. Oh, yeah.
And, the image that came to me as I was talking about it and trying to get my head around why I should go first is me standing in a classroom looking at a girl that I wished would let me know she liked me. And I'm in junior high, and you say to your friend, hey, Jason, would you go ask her friend what she thinks about me? Because I don't want her to know that I like her if I don't know she likes me.
That's right.
And what I learned as I got older is, why don't you just take a shot, dude?
Yeah.
Just go over and say, hey, I like you. Or something to indicate I'm interested. That's better than living in that world of, I never knew.
Right.
Yeah.
I just never knew. So that was the image that came to me at the time. I go, I know she loves me. I mean, we spent 40-something years together now. Yep. All I got to do is, who cares who goes first?
Exactly.
I just don't want this to be wrong anymore.
And at the risk of making this sound selfish or self-serving, that's a much more attractive way of... you become a much more attractive person to your spouse when you do that.
Yeah.
I didn't, I don't know what keeps me from realizing that, of holding on to my part and waiting for her to go first is so unattractive and so repelling to someone.
Yeah.
And
in a very practical sense, it's not working for you.
It's not working either.
It's petty.
That's right.
It's right.
Exceptionally
petty.
Right.
But I don't see that. I don't convince myself of
Which
that
is
in my
the
own
part
head.
You keep saying in your head about them.
Yeah.
Why are they being so petty?
Yeah, they're being so petty.
Why can't they just come and say it?
Why can't you?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
It's tough.
And I think that's just that's the whole deal. I like the idea of even saying going first in the whole situation, which is Jesus' command in the Sermon on the Mount, that when I know there's something wrong between me and the other person. And I think this is, once again, go back to our point of the reason I ultimately do this, because this is what Christ calls me to do, which is the person I most want to be in this loving union where there's nothing between us is me and God.
That's right.
And he makes pretty clear, if there's something between you and somebody else, something you haven't done your part about, you think there's not something between me and you?
Yep.
You think there's not something that's holding this up, that you, whether it be you're not forgiving the person who's wronged you, or in this case, you've wronged someone else and you have not tried to make amends. You have not tried to work it out. You should leave the temple. You should go and try and make it right before you come back and make a sacrifice.
Yeah.
I think for those of us
and Jesus uses both examples. I was sitting here thinking, we talk so much about when I realize I'm wrong, I should just go and open myself up. But a part of living out the gospel is me also going to people and going, hey man, what you said to me really sort of...
Yeah, that's right.
I just want to deal honestly with it. It hurt me.
Yeah.
This happened. Can we work on this? That's also, because he says at one point, if you realize somebody has something against you, go fix it. Right. If you realize you have something against somebody, go fix it.
Go fix it. Absolutely.
That's right. And that ultimately, whether it works, I mean, we spend a lot of time, more often than not, I have found that it does work. that if you will put out on either end, if you will offer forgiveness first, or you will offer the apology first, I would say even like 65% healthy relationships, it'll work. I mean, with a really hard-hearted person, maybe it doesn't go the same way.
And the size of the debt you have incurred.
Sure.
I can't think of a time, listening to you say that, Nathan, I can't think of a time when someone I love has come to me and said, hey, what you said hurt me, or you offended me. I can't think of a time when I didn't just immediately get like, oh my gosh.
Right.
Either I didn't realize it, or I appreciate you coming because I needed to say something. I don't think of a time when I just rebuffed that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think, once again, vulnerability breeds vulnerability. Yeah. When you're vulnerable with me, there is something, once again, not with everyone. There are people that are very bitter and hard-hearted that you get vulnerable and I go, man, now I can smash you good. And that's the fear all of us, I think, have of everybody. Yeah. My experience has been anybody that I am vulnerable with, the vast majority, they intentionally go, let me get a little softer. Because I don't want to beat this guy up. Man, he looks real vulnerable right now. There is that godly compassion that takes over. So it does work most of the time. But even if you are convinced it's not going to, it is your responsibility and your obligation as a follower of Jesus that I live in the truth, that I am a sinner. And so I can be vulnerable with someone I've wronged, even if they don't forgive me, because I know God's going to forgive me. And that there is more than enough love for me, even if this person decides they're not going to forgive and they're going to withhold it from me. Yep. God's got it for me, so I'm safe to live in this reality.
Yeah.
So we do it, not because it works. Do it because it's right.
Yeah.
But a lot of times it's going to work.
as long as I get again, I'd like to. You're as long as I don't put the analogy you put in a bad way of the Band-Aid. Works does not mean the bleeding immediately stops. No, it means that we have decided we're going to work on the wound together.
Apologies are like what you said. It's just the acknowledgement of the wound.
And that's the knowledge of this thing, and we both see it. Can we work on fixing this together? That may take a moment. But that is making it work. That's the work. That's the work.
Because as Jason already said, in my experience, even with small apologies, you never go back. Yeah. You never go back to the way it was. You go forward to something new because now I have the knowledge. But I think that's the fear everyone has. I wish, and what you're ultimately saying, as someone who has deeply wronged people in my life, what you're really saying is, I wish we could go back to when no one knew. I wish we could, because then it was all nice and, no one mistrusted me and no one did this. Because if we could just go back, but this time I'll do good, but, it'll work. And, well, that's not the truth. On the other side of it now, I go, man, I'm really honestly thankful we didn't, because now I have a depth of knowing that I'm loved. Because this person has seen the worst in me, and they're still with me. This person has seen the ugliest parts of me. That must mean they actually really care. They're willing to stick some stuff out with me at this point.
I firmly believe that's what it means when it says love covers a multitude of sins.
Yes.
I do too.
That's what it means.
Yes.
I do too.
Good note to leave it on. So, all right. So when you come back next week, we will be in a new recording session.
Yes, because we'll have different clothes.
We'll have different clothes on. We will have different knowledge and different experiences, and bring something fresh to that, which may be one of your questions if you send them in.
There you go. We need some questions.
Send them in, or you're going to get what we come up with.
Whatever we come up with.
And we will not apologize for that. There we go. All right. See you guys next week.